here about online privacy, which, as we all know, is a huge topic right now. And I can tell you, after preparing a little bit for the last week and talking with these three gentlemen, that we could spend an hour or two with each one of them alone and kind of only begin to scratch the surface.
The idea of the research I did was to study society and cities, how city functions and how they evolve, and how city dwellers move and behave in cities based on all the kinds of new data that is available and that has become available in recent years because of technology. Okay. Unlike some of what has been discussed so far, when I create a Facebook profile, I voluntarily put my picture online, and when I navigate and surf the web, I know that someone knows that I'm visiting a website, and we all know more or less that someone is taking notes. But we may not think that every time we walk by and we have a cell phone with us, the telecom operator knows where we are. When we swipe our Clipper card, the city knows where we boarded and when we ended our journey, our trip, and so forth and so on. And all this kind of data can be used to study how city functions. So yeah, it's society and how, for example, public transportations and in general tourism and mobility function in big cities, and how they are disrupted by public events like Obama's inauguration day and so forth. So the whole idea is basically of using what we call digital footprints, being footprints because they are something that we leave behind without realizing we're doing that. And so the Obama project was one of them. To be clear, we actually didn't know who was there, not because it's not possible, but because we chose not to even have that data available as part of the partnership with AT&T. So we would get anonymized. We knew part of the phone number enough to know where a person was coming from. So basically the prefix in a sense. And so with that, we were able to understand which countries and which states within the US were more interested in the event by looking at the cell phone activity and how it changed between before, during, and after the inauguration day. And by looking at how the activity changed and when it spiked and how long it took to decay to the normal levels again, we were able to understand how long people stayed in Washington. And by looking at handovers, which are, it's basically a transition. If you move while you're on the phone, at one point you will be out of reach from the cell phone tower to which you're connected, and so the telecom operator will have to transfer your call to the next one. So by looking at those, by looking at that data, you can understand very well how people move. And so for example, I did that as a test. I actually didn't publish anything about it, but Manhattan is interesting because it's very well delimited with respect to the other boroughs, and if you look at the handovers between their cell tower and you compare them with Trump, they have very precise car counts for every bridge.
Because they count on the bridge.
Yeah, so there is a perfect correlation, almost perfect correlation.
Because we did several experiments. In one experiment, we tried to see whether you can take publicly available Facebook images, and I refer specifically, without even getting inside Facebook, what of a Facebook profile you can access from a search engine, being Google. So we use the primary profile photo that people make available, and we compare it to images coming from dating sites, where people do use personal photos. If you don't get the date, but they don't use their real names. They tend to use pseudonyms. So we did it for a specific geographical location, and we tried to see what the overlap between the two sets was. And we were able, using this approach, to identify 1 out of 10 members of the dating site. The second experiment was about setting up a kiosk on CMU campus and asking people who were passing by whether they wanted to participate in an experiment. If they did, they sat at the kiosk with took a picture of them with a webcam and we asked them to fill out a survey. As they were filling out the survey, we were in fact uploading the image up to a cloud computing cluster where we were comparing in real time to images from Facebook profiles. If we did find a good enough match, on the last page of the survey, the person, the subject, would dynamically see updated a set of images that the face recognizer had selected as likely to include the person's face. It would ask the subject, do you see yourself in the photo or not? And using this approach, we identified 1 out of 3 of the subjects in the experiment. So we thought about pushing the envelope with the third experiment, which was about a story of data accretion. Like capital accrues over time. If you're good with your investment, data accrues across databases. So the story became a story where we developed an iPhone app. Strictly, we wanted only to use publicly available data and publicly available technology because we wanted to do something that anyone else can do, but in fact, the larger organizations can do even better than what we did. So this iPhone app does exactly what you described. Takes a photo, tries to find a photo online which has a name associated to it. If there is a good enough match, then you have a presumptive, so probabilistically correct name for the anonymous face in the street. With the name, the script then looks for publicly available information associated with the name. And once again, it's a probabilistic search. If your name is John Doe, good luck. Your privacy is protected by the crowd. If your name is Alessandro Acquisti, much rarer name, and you find the right information. And specifically, we look for demographic data. When you're born, the date, and which state. And then, if we did find that information, we use an algorithm which we developed in another paper which we published in 2009, which predicts social security numbers starting from publicly available data, which is another example of statistical identification data mining. And we predict the SSN and we send it back to the phone. So that now there is a face of the person and the SSN and the name presumptive, probabilistically correct name of the person on the phone. And we call it an example of privacy in the age of augmented reality. Because social security number is just one of the things that we could have done. You can imagine going around and trying to infer the credit score of the person in front of you, the sexual orientation of the person in front of you. I mean, this is something that human beings have done forever. Evolution has taught us to gut feeling based infer information about other people as we meet them. And now we are creating technologies which create another channel through which we infer sensitive information about each other.
We sort of think that when companies operate, they can't just live within the scope of the law. If companies hide behind, we operate just within what the law does, it means they're like many years in something new like data privacy. You can get away with a lot more because it hasn't been legislated yet. And so my belief is that companies have a responsibility to operate in an ethical way and set a standard that's higher than what the law dictates, because that's good for society, it's good for the company, and it's good for evolving the business. I think when we were in 2008, when the financial meltdown happened, there was a lot of people who just hid behind, we could sell a loan that we knew people couldn't pay for. And I think it's the same now with digital privacy. It's not about what you can get away with, it's about what is morally ethical to do.
David, what's the great good that can be done with, for example, you're helping customers collect and organize data. What is the great good in that?
Well, so there's several things. We provide content to people, and when they come to us, we don't know. We may have an email address, and we may have a job title. So we can start off by knowing what, we can differentiate between like a salesperson, a marketing professional, a portfolio manager with a financial company. And based on that information alone, which is sort of declared information, we can create a targeted feed of information for them that's delivered via an email or an RSS feed in a way that knows the type of things that salespeople are interested in. knows the type of triggers that happen that might facilitate a conversation. So if a salesperson called up a customer, if they knew something was going on at that customer, like they just had a reorganization, or they just opened a new branch of Home Depot in a particular town, the person selling to Home Depot would know that, and so they could have a conversation with them. So what happens is that the more we know about the customer, the more we can give them value faster, right? They don't need to codify all this, and customize the channel information. We can provide it faster and easier to them. So what it does, it lubricates the workflow. The second thing is, as we notice what they're clicking on, we can make sure they receive more of what they found interesting in the past. All right? And I think those are good things to help, that they're using observed information to provide a better user experience. But we collect that data with the intent of using it for that purpose.